I've said it before and I'll say it again. The people who came up with these ancient torture methods could have had prolific writing careers. They are equal parts grotesque as they are creative. They definitely came from some very sadistic dark minds. Here are 10 ancient torture or execution methods that you may have never heard of. This has been used as far back as the 16th century, and it is both dehumanizing and cringe-inducing. First of all, you would have your nostrils clenched shut with a device that looks like an intimidating wrench. You will have to open your mouth in order to breathe, at which point a hollow bite block will be shoved in, followed by a long tubed funnel, or maybe even a long round piece of cloth. Next, a high volume of liquid will be forcefully poured down your gullet. This will mostly be water, but it wasn't uncommon to add urine or animal blood just to kick things up a notch. Of course, you'll be gagging, your chest will run cold, you'll regurgitate some of it and aspirate it into your trachea, which will burn like a son of a bitch. The point is to inflate the stomach so much that it may rupture, but it will also certainly kill by diluting the sodium in your blood, which will take a while. In the meantime, your gut will be repeatedly whacked with sticks over and over, causing you to violently vomit as onlookers watch and laugh. A gibbet refers to any device used in public executions, but the act of gibbeting is a whole other story. You need the gallows for this one. Instead of having a rope tied to the neck of the prisoner, they were shoved inside of a bone-tight, human-shaped cage made of iron. They were then hung up on the gallows on display. If you were busy on the day of the execution, it's no worries, because you'd have around 3 full days to swing by and witness the spectacle. The prisoner was left to die of either exposure or dehydration, but it gets worse. Once the prisoner was nearing death and smelling extra ripe, crows would come perch on the cage and peck and peck and peck him alive. His juicy eyeballs, tender lips, and soft earlobes were especially delectable. Spectators really loved to witness the prisoner crying, screaming, and begging for mercy. I mean, just imagine this. You're dying in absolute terror and agony, and the soundtrack of your demise is a laughing, cheering crowd. Necklacing involves filling a tire with petrol, placing it around the prisoner's neck, and lighting it on fire. We already know that burning alive is one of the most insufferable pains a human can face, but this draws it out. As if that isn't barbaric enough, hands were sometimes amputated and sharp barbed wire wrapped around the mangled wrists to ensure that the execution was successful. These weren't your standard light passenger tires, more like the tires you see at the gym, and at times weighed over 300 pounds. As soon as it's lit, your instinct will be to flail and try to outrun the fire, but you'll find movement impossible. It's like you're trapped in a cage made of heat. You'll shut your eyes to shield them from the rising licking flames. Your flesh will begin to brûler immediately. Near the tire, it will disintegrate altogether, giving way to oozing cracked raw tissue. Soon the rubber of the tire will melt, melting onto your skinned, yelping wounds. You cannot imagine the concentrated agony. You'll wish for death, which can take up to 20 minutes to arrive. This is still used today in some of the most brutal prisons in the world. It's a punishment for hunger strikes. Instruments are not always sterilized and are administered with such frustration that it causes some of the worst pains imaginable. A long thick tube is shoved down the throat, often without lubricating. This offers a sensation of sharp metal digging and ripping through tissue. Every time it moves, it's like a chemical fire is roaring up your throat. Occasionally, the force ruptures the esophagus. This induces a wild pounding pressure that penetrates through your chest. The surrounding tissue responds with inflammation that can plug up the airway. This kicks up a profound panic and doom. Sometimes so much nutrition is forced down the tube at quick rates that it straight up busts the stomach. Imagine a small nuke detonating in your gut, causing ripple after ripple of mouth-watering, nauseating, doubling over cramping. And it only gets worse. As the day fades to night, a deadly infection of the lining of the gut springs up. Death can arrive in anywhere from minutes to 4 days later. The movie Saw 5 offers a fairly accurate portrayal of the very real execution device. The person strapped down on their back as a hardy, sharp axe swings just above them, slowly lowering. With each new swing, it'll slice deeper and deeper into their meats. The pendulum will never stop swinging as long as it remains uninterrupted. It's symbolic for life, which seems like a sick, ironic joke. There is a lot of power churned into the sharp tool as it swings and reportedly sliced into people like hot metal and butter. The first few surface slices will only be a few inches in length. Imagine a paper cut made with thick cardboard that's doused in rubbing alcohol. The speed of the blade will burn feverishly. The next few slices will reach your bottom layer of flesh. It will reassault the already battered wound. This will feel like pure acid. Each swing leaves little time to recover and prepare. Soon you'll watch in horror as inches of the blade disappears inside of your body. Soon your intestines are being minced up sloppily. This feels like napalm smoldering at thousands of degrees. It can take 2 to 4 minutes to finally die. Soon after, you'll be in pieces. This execution didn't require any extra bells and whistles or added theatrics. It simply required one prisoner, a mob of sadistic and angry folk, and one steep rock. This rock was known as the Tarpian Rock, and it offered an intimidating straight-down drop of 80 feet. It was just high enough to likely cause death, but low enough for the possibility of surviving a minute or two in bone-busted, organ-ruptured anguish. A second go-around was always a possibility. First, the prisoner was dragged to the top of the toe-tingling cliff, and their utter terror put on full display. Next, they were turned over to the angry mob, where they were brutally beaten, taunted, and tortured. There was only one strict rule: the prisoner must remain alive and aware. After the villagers had their fun, it was showtime. The kicking and pleading prisoner was hoisted into the air by a group of 2 or 4, rocked back and forth, and then heaved off of the cliff. They would go airborne only to plummet just a couple short seconds to their mingled death below. If they continued screaming, the process was repeated, but it was rare for anyone to survive for long. Amir Mint is an execution that involves locking a person in a confined space forever, but wait until you hear how it was done. Turns out Edgar Allan Poe pulled inspiration from real-life events. The accused was forced into a tiny crevice in a tomb and walled up. I'm talking no room for movement, just barely enough space to expand your lungs. At times, when a tomb wasn't available, they were shoved in a tiny coffin with chains around it. There was no getting out. It was like Fort Knox. Just imagine the sounds of the world fading away brick by brick, the lights disappearing, your breathing grows heavy and heart erratic as panic and doom drowns you. Your bones and joints ache to move, but there's no room. Your neck begins screaming in agony, giving birth to a profound headache. Hours melt into days. Your tongue feels like a sponge left in the scorching sun. Your stomach aches like it's slowly dissolving in acid. There's no spit left to lubricate. You smash your head into the brick, which brings no relief. It takes 19 days to finally fade away. I shouldn't even be shocked anymore about how creatively gruesome these are. Also known as the Heretics Fork. This method was used during the Spanish Inquisition. This device is a lockable collar with 2 forks protruding. One digs into the chin and the other the chest. Tilt your head as far back as you can for a sec. Imagine attempting to do that for hours or days straight. Because, you see, if you can't, you'll drive the sharp fork into your chin, which will also result in it piercing your chest. A heretic is basically a witch. Well, it was a witch hunt. If you had evolved ideas of the world or worshipped the wrong religion, you'd be deemed a heretic and damned to this fate. This torture was meant to get you to talk. Once you buckled, you'd be killed any number of terrible ways, but back to the fork. Once you can no longer keep your head back and neck locked, the sharp prongs that were as long as a shark's teeth would jam into your jaw. This would unleash an explosion of hot pulsating hell that would shoot down your throat and into your ears. You would definitely never eat solids ever again. The proper name was Pawanakuli. This execution was a favorite of the Romans. First, you'd be flogged with rods until nearly every inch of you is raw, bloodied, and covered in biting welts. Next, you'd be forced into a sack, but you wouldn't be alone. In the infancy of this execution, you'd be sewn up with some slithering, venomous, hissing buddies, likely a few vipers. But later, things got weird. A dog, monkey, and chicken was added to the party. I swear you can't make this stuff up. But that's still not where it ends. After being sealed in this sack with your party animals, you'd be dropped in the sea. Which is awful because those animals didn't commit any crimes. You would likely be attacked by the viper long before you even drop in the water. The pure panic of the monkey may provoke it to rip off your face, or worse. You would no doubt be in the eye of a desperately defensive tornado of wild animals. At least you'd lose consciousness in 2 minutes from drowning. This is death by molten gold. It's not poured on your head or your body. Instead, it's poured down your throat. In 1599, a Spanish governor met this fate. His crime was being greedy and gold-hungry. So, in fitting fashion, he was fed a final meal of 1,947 Fahrenheit glowing liquid molten gold. And I come bearing terrible news. You will not die quick enough. Your supple, spongy tongue will be devoured by this lava in 2 seconds or less. As this piping metal creeps down your throat, it will seep into your larynx, turning your voice box into a melting statue. This will turn your toe-curling screams into silent static. The steam's already assaulting your organs long before the gold reaches your stomach. Once it does, it will effortlessly eat through your lining. Don't forget, it's leaving behind scorched earth everywhere it reaches. The pressure created by the heat and steam will cause your nearby organs to inflate and pop like water balloons. But death will come from suffocation, and you'll remain aware for up to 2 minutes.